So talking about constitutional issues or the system,
Right.
how is our political system flawed?
Well, in my humble opinion, we think it's something that it isn't, and we have a lot of influence from outside countries because we have a lot of American television, and so we think that we tend to assume that their policies and their way of doing things is the way we do it. So we think about voting for a prime minister, but we don't vote for a prime minister. That is not a choice that we have. We vote for MPs and individuals. And if you live in New Providence, you don't even get like local government. All right, so you literally just get your one vote, but your one vote is cut up into parts for like 4 and 5 different things. So you may vote for somebody that you don't like to get the prime minister that you like, or you may not vote for somebody you like to avoid a prime minister that you don't like. And so it's like, in a way, is that really serving the purpose? Is that really helping, you know, the people or whatever?
And speaking of our political system, let's say we were to change that particular process and we were to, you know, have term limits imposed and some of the other suggestions that I just see on social media alone. Would we need a referendum for all of these changes?
Yes.
If we wanted to say a constitutional overhaul,
We would, because then it would.
we'd have like a referendum that lasted like a month then.
No, because and then I think
Very expensive.
I think the problem with the referendums have been that they were too short notice. You didn't get enough time to educate the Brazilian people on exactly what it was.
You think that's the case, though?
I think that is 100% the case. And like,
I don't know. I feel like at least one of them I know, because my goodness, we've had now a series of about three.
Yeah.
And I feel though the one in particular leading up to the women's rights, that I feel like I heard about that for weeks and months at a time. I even took it upon myself to, you know, read the newspapers and try to get educated and tuned into some of the talk shows and what have you.
see, yeah, with that
But
one,
everybody wasn't doing that, I guess.
it's not just that. The problem, it wasn't enough time. It still wasn't enough time to deal, because what happened was there are 3 topics that will incense the general public, right? If you want to get great ratings, there's 3 things that you can talk about. You talk about Haitians, you talk about gay people, and then you can talk about women, right?
rights.
And so like when you conflate gender with a supposed or perceived homosexual agenda, whatever, then suddenly you're going to need a lot more time, and and I do not think that the persons who were dealing with it took it seriously, because they're just like, it's just a bunch of fringe people who are making this complaint, and they didn't take it seriously that a lot of Bahamians feel a certain way about a certain thing, and they're not, if they think that you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes,
Right. They're just gonna.
right, so you need to calm that fear or whatever, and like that wasn't addressed. There wasn't enough time to address that in the time they set.
Well, do you think, particularly with that referendum, do you think it was smart for them to have such a short period of time, realizing, you know, all of those hot topics that were embodied in it?
But I do not think that they presented it with the idea of those hot topics being there.
Yeah.
I think what happened was somebody read it and said, well, what if this meant this? And it just kept spiraling.
But that's okay, though, because with anything, especially of is that importance of a referendum and bringing new things into law, they should have thought about what if, don't you think? There are always pros and cons to every situation, but I feel as though, like you said, it wasn't enough time for that particular. Hey, sorry, this echo. It ain't gonna work. Because I was like,
you have to get used to it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so we could go again with that question, and then I'll leave it alone.
I know.
Yeah, the fly. I don't bring the flit. Bring the flit. Because that fly, I hope that you see that fly.
Yeah, we'll come back in 5, 4, 3, just with your question.
Last question. Okay, Stephen, do you think that they really realized how much time they needed to educate the Bahamian people? Or do you think, once again, it was just plain ignorance, selective ignorance on the public's behalf?
I think that what happened was, for a very long time, persons have benefited from the general population not being, to use the cliche term, critical thinkers or anything.
Right.
So like, it benefits, you could sell more products if you're selling it to a dumb person. You
Right.
can get more votes if you're doing it to a dumb person. You can, like literally anything that you want to do, it's easier if the person is just like a child.
My
Yeah.
goodness, Stephen, are you calling us Bahamians dumb?
No, I'm saying that.
What are you saying?
I'm saying that like it benefits them that we accept easy answers or simple
Yeah.
answers that say, oh yeah, we care about you, and you do
Right.
not go in depth.
Right.
Because
And could you argue, ladies and Stephen, that used to be back in the day. I feel as though our Bahamian public
Has grown
has
up.
grown,
Right.
has matured, has been enlightened,
which is why
and
these things keep on
educated.
backfiring now.
Exactly.
Because it's like we might not know the answer, but I think for the most part, we know that something is afoot, or
Yeah.
we feel like
Yeah.
a type of way about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me throw something out at you before we wrap this up. You do realize that the referendum, that particular referendum, was a different political party that was governing the country. And previous referendums was a different political party governing
So
the
true.
country. I just say that to make the point that it seems like the more things change, the more they somewhat remain the same, because the same faults are at play here in that you have either willfully or, you know, whatever, you've taken the opportunity to not inform your constituents and your community, and you've done it in a short span of time, but the end result ended up being the same.
I mean, outside of time, though, it was just one big distraction. We were talking about completely different issues
Right.
anyway, right? And so, I mean, the big thing was, should women have the same rights as men when it
Yeah.
comes to, you know, whether she marries a...
Passing on birthright.
Exactly, and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
And then somebody kicked in the door and was like,
Yeah.
what about gay people?
Exactly. And so,
they totally lost.
outside of time, it was just a completely just different circumstances that need to be dealt with at different times.
Yeah,
right?
it
It was just this big mass confusion.
Smokescreen,
Yeah.
yeah.
And none of it
It was
made
almost as if
sense.
somebody put a pizza on a table and someone decided to come in and say, oh my goodness, why are you plucking a chicken? You shouldn't pluck a chicken. Chickens are, you know, creatures of the earth and they shouldn't be plucked. And you're like,
But
wait
it's
a
about
minute,
the pizza.
what?
Right, but see, you know, what could have happened? They had enough time to say, you know what, we acknowledge your concerns and we're going to address them. But because they didn't address them, or even because they didn't address them, it only fed the idea that something was happening,
Yeah.
or that this was whatever we thought it was. Well, not we, but persons thought it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree.
Well,
I have a heavy question for you.
Go ahead. Sure.
So, I mean, you alluded to it, but at the end of the day, the government benefits more if
Right.
we keep with the D's, right? We keep dumb, distracted, and
Right.
dependent.
Right.
Do you agree?
Yeah. I mean, all governments will-
I was about to say all governments?
Right, all
So then
governments.
what do we as people do to get to steer away from general ignorance?
I mean, you just need to ask why.
Yes.
Like, why is everything happening? Like, what is the purpose behind this?
Or what is my purpose here, or how I can even
Not just your purpose,
help?
but like also like when you see something, if somebody puts a cup on a table, right? You don't just say,
You don't
why?
just accept it.
What you mean my PM ain't doing things for me because he genuinely love me?
No one talks with that, Janae.
Janae dies when she's illustrating
I
something.
understand.
I'm such an actress.
I still think that the general public is waking up. I'm sorry.
I mean, on one hand they are, but on the other hand, there are still pockets that
yeah.
a big problem is being able to scream, right?
Yeah.
And so on one hand, you have something like social media where people go online and they type all their problems and their confusion, and they type it up and they feel better, and
Yeah.
that is the problem.
Yeah.
Because it's not enough to type a status when there's an actual issue. It's not enough to see a problem, scream about it, and then go to sleep because you didn't actually solve the problem. But now the next time you won't feel as bad about the problem because you had that cathartic release. You screamed and you punched something or whatever. You actually need to address the problem. You need to say, well, why does this problem exist? Does this problem serve something else? And then it's like, can we address this in a different manner? Like, is something preventing us from correcting this problem? Because I'm not the first person to see this problem. You know what I'm saying? So, like, those are the questions you need to ask. Basically, anything that you have a problem with, you need to ask why it exists in the first place.
Absolutely.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to wrap this couch talk up. But you know what? Before we go, look right there into that camera and tell everyone how they can find you, Stephen, because this is the kind of thing that you do.
I feel like you wrote it down. Online, Ali Molek Fan Club. They're going to have to put that on the screen because I'm pretty sure that no one knows how to spell that. Or Shinwin on Facebook.
We'll have to also put that up on the screen for you.
I apologize. I apologize for having funny sounding names.
It's quite all right. But yes, Stephen, Hanna, thank you for helping us continue the national conversation. And we'd love to have you back anytime.
Sure, sure.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.